Welcome back to my little channel. Yes, the forest is out. We're going to talk about the environment again. Do we have to? Yes, we do have to. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not a brilliant scientist. Definitely not one of those huge scientists that signed the believe us that there is climate warming bullshit thingy. Definitely not one of the major scientists of, what was it? Somewhere in Namibia. Mickey Mouse he was called or something. Never mind. I'll make a video about that one eventually, I think, if I find the time to waste on that. But is climate science real? Well, first off, there is no scientific field of climate. So, no. But is there science about the climate? Well, in that case, there's plenty of science about the climate. One of the things, for example, is, do you know how much the Earth's atmosphere weighs? Well, who cares about that? No, it's interesting. It really is. Because let's be honest, when people talk about how CO2 is a problem, they tell us in how much million tons of CO2 humans produce. And then they pretend that that's a big deal. Which is all good and well, but million tons compared to what? How much does the Earth's atmosphere weigh? Now, that's quite interesting that you ask me, because I looked it up. Mind you, I'm not a scientist. I didn't do these calculations. So how much does the Earth's atmosphere weigh? Well, someone took the time to figure that out, according to the Encyclopedia Britannica. In 1798, a British physicist, Henry Cavendish, became the first person to accurately determine the mass of Earth. His painstakingly conducted experiment calculated the density of the Earth and thus the value of G, the universal gravitational constant. Okay, fair enough. So what does that mean? Well, the total mass of Earth's atmosphere is about 5 quadrillion tons, whereas the weighing of the world is 6 sextillion tons. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing those numbers right. I'm pretty sure I pronounced 5.5 and 6 correct, but the other two, those are not numbers I usually talk about, let's be honest. But the atmosphere, being 5.5 quadrillion tons, is quite a lot, isn't it? I mean, when we're talking about how humans create so much carbon dioxide, I'm willing to say, you know what, maybe it's not a bigger deal as people claim it is. Well, how can you say that? Well, as I said, I normally don't deal with large numbers. So if I'm going to take 5.5 quadrillion and I put that 5.5 quadrillion over to billion, we're talking about 5,500,000 billion. No, that's not true, because 5,500,000 is 1 billion. No, that's not correct either. 5.5 quadrillion is a 5,500,000 billion. So 1 billion is 1 millionth of a quadrillion, apparently. See, I'm using this because I can't figure it out myself. So, okay, what does that make it in million? Well, that's probably going to add 3 zeros to it, doesn't it? That's how it works. Because every step is 3 zeros, I've been once told. I'm not quite sure, mind you. You're showing it. I'm sorry, I'm showing it to you here. Yeah? If I'm wrong, they're wrong. If they're wrong, what do I know? So anyway, back to billion. So 5.5 quadrillion is 5,500,000 billion. Okay. So how much CO2 does humans produce? Because it's a problem. CO2 is a problem. Yeah, it's a problem. So how much of a problem is it? Okay, let's look at this. According to this person, wiki user, I have no idea. I've been looking for more precise numbers. It's difficult to find. I have found plenty an example of how much individual countries do, but I can't find a total number. And I'm lazy, so I'm not going to calculate it one by one. Anyway, this person says humans are currently pumping roughly 30 billion tons of CO2 in the atmosphere from fuel sources each year. And I'm glad that he puts the tons in tons and in billion tons. Because 13 billion tons. If you haven't seen the quadrillion number earlier, 30 billion tons is absolutely a massive number. Which it is, by the way. I'm not denying that 30 billion tons isn't a massive number. But 30 billion out of 5.5 million billion isn't that big a deal. How is 30 billion out of 5 quadrillion? It's a blip. But then again, it's not really fair what I'm doing here, because we know that the amount of carbon created by humans is less than 3% of 0.003% of the total atmosphere in the Earth. Because we know that carbon dioxide is around 400 parts per million, which makes it 0.03% of the Earth's atmosphere. And out of that 0.03%, 97% is created by the Earth's atmosphere itself. So, if we're talking about the amount of CO2 created by humans, it's a blip. How big is that blip? Let's take a look at it from this point. How much is 30 billion out of 5.5 million billion? And I think the answer will somewhat surprise you. So that 30 billion is roughly less than half, a 10,000% of the whole big atmosphere we live in. Now, it's true that these calculations are rough shots, because no one can 100% surely tell you that the atmosphere's weight and total volume, well, the volume is pretty much calculable, I guess, is 5.5 quadrillion. So let's assume that that 5.5 quadrillion is wrong by a factor of 50. Nah, let's not call numbers. Let's say it's not 5.5 quadrillion, it's 1 quadrillion. Okay, sounds fair. Sounds fair. It's 1 quadrillion. So it's not 5.5, it's 1. Wouldn't be any better. See, even then, it's still only a fraction of a fraction. Now, don't get me wrong, the 30,000 atmospheric CO2 is man-made. I'm willing to believe that. I really am willing to believe that. But it's not even a drop on a hot plate. People, we're being made to fear this. And I don't know why they want you to fear this, but we're being made to fear this. Now, obviously, I haven't done all the calculations the way I should have. Fair enough. I'm willing to be berated over it. By all means, prove me wrong. I'm no scientist, but prove me wrong. We need people to think about this shit, because we're being lied to. So, if this is correct, that we are creating 30 billion tons of CO2, and this is correct, that the world's atmosphere is 5.5 quadrillion tons, then yeah, I'm sorry, that's nothing. And we know that most of the CO2 in the atmosphere is not man-made. CO2 goes in a cycle. I mean, there are biologists out there who will tell you that at this point in time, the world is still on the low end when it comes to CO2. They'd rather have it around 1,000, and we're now at 400 parts per million. Sorry, 1,000 parts per million, 400 parts per million. But seriously, people, 30, yeah, that's just these two. That's the amount of atmospheric CO2 humans create. I'm sorry, but I know there are people who say it's a very serious thing. I can't help but nod my head in shame that these people are called scientists. I'm not a scientist, and I can show you these figures. And these figures are not made up by me. Okay, so the 30 billion one may be made up. I don't know. I can't find a complete answer. But it seems reasonable because China is one of the biggest polluters in the world, and it comes up to 13 billion, if I'm not mistaken. Having said that, China is one of the top polluters in the world, and it's possible that a third of the world's pollution comes from China. I don't know. But even if we double the numbers, even if we say, you know what, humans don't create 30 billion tons of CO2, it's 60 billion tons of CO2. Yeah, I don't want to be rude, but that's still less than 1%. That's still less than 1 promille. So at what point are we going to say, you know what, maybe this isn't as big a deal as people point out? I don't know. I don't get how people are still thinking this is serious. I do think we have a problem. Seriously, we do have a problem. We have people trying to force other people to pay money and to destroy their infrastructure and their economies for a fake ghost. Because let's be honest, CO2 is a ghost, isn't it? It's the very basic element that created, well, not created, but makes life possible on this planet. And now we're pretending it's such a problem. Biologists are saying, oh no, more, please. And kids at school are being told, no, this is a problem. Anyway, like, share, subscribe. I don't care about this like and subscribe what. But do share. Please do share. The more people that realize that, you know what, CO2 might be a thing, but it's never as big a thing as they claim it to be, the more people who realize that, the better. Because, can we please stop with this nonsense? Anyway, criticism as always is more than welcome. Like, share and subscribe if you feel so inclined. And I hope to see you all next time.